Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today we have Allison Buckhart on the show today. She's going to share her story about her journey with cancer and how the arts took her to the road of healing. We got a great show in store for you guys today, so get you something to drink and get you a snack and come on back. Well, Allison, hello. Finally, nice to meet you virtually in
Yes.
person. Thank you so much for taking the time out to share your story and your journey. And I am looking forward to just hearing all about your journey and what you have to say. And I'm hoping the people that watch this show really get some out of it because I know for me, like I told you when we talk, I love doing interviews with people to hear their personal testimony, their personal story, because I think that's, in my opinion, it's a little bit more impactful, you know. So why don't we start out by you just sharing a little bit about yourself, and we'll just go from there.
All right, sure. I am currently living in Gardnerville, Nevada with my parents. And yeah, the past few years has been quite an exciting journey, a lot of changes and moves. I lived up in Seattle for about 7 months and then came down here to live with my parents for right now. And so, yeah, I'm 26 and just graduated college a few years ago and have been working a variety of different jobs, especially music jobs during that time.
Oh, nice. So where did you go and where did you get your degree in?
Yes, I went to Sacramento State University in Sacramento, of course, and I studied piano performance. So it involved a lot of recitals, a lot of performances, and it was just a great experience to dive deeper into music, which has been just one of the loves of my life for a long time.
Okay, nice. So Allison, so I know I want to, so we'll talk a little bit about the diagnoses first, and then we'll dive into the arts because I just think just the way you explain it to me is really, really phenomenal. So let's talk a little bit about your childhood. Well, we'll talk about that first. How did you get introduced to the arts, and was it always something that you like to do?
Yes, so my parents have always been very supportive of the arts. That's been a huge blessing and gift in my life. And so my mom, she introduced me into music and also nature journaling, in which she would take me and my sister out. We were homeschooled, so she'd take us outdoors and we would find something in nature, such as a bird or a plant or something to learn about. So we'd draw it, sketch it or something, and then write about the details of it. So that was one of the creative ways I learned about art. And then she also taught me music. She gave me my first piano lessons. And then I just kept just loving music so much. So I went on to have other teachers and then study piano in college. And then I also was involved in playing violin and taking violin lessons, being involved in orchestras and choirs. And I also enjoyed writing as a hobby. So I've done some blogging and journaling too.
Oh, nice. So this has been well, I'm just gonna ask you instead of just assuming. So has this been a part of your family since because I know you said your mom taught you piano lessons and things like that. So where did she learn how to play the piano?
Yeah, so she grew up, she was actually a daughter of a pastor, so she grew up involved in playing hymns in church, and that was kind of how she learned about music. And then my dad, he doesn't currently play an instrument, but he grew up in a musical family as well. Both his parents sang beautifully, and they were part of a music ministry at a church, so he grew up also around a lot of music.
Yeah, I find it interesting that most people who have a come from the musical background, it tend to be somewhat in their family from some generation, maybe it's second generational back or one generational back, but some way, somehow it's in the family. And I
Yes.
think, yeah, that's interesting. Are you the only child or you have any siblings or?
I have one older sister who's about 2.5 years older than me, and she played viola while I played violin, so we were both involved in orchestras.
Wow, wow, that's interesting. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great to hear. So let's talk a little bit about your journey with cancer. Tell me, I guess we could start. When were you first diagnosed and what happened?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed last year. April of last year, I noticed a small tumor and I didn't have any other symptoms, but I went to get it checked out at that time. I had no idea that it was cancer, and it turned out to be a very rare form of cancer. So I went
Yeah.
through several appointments over the summer last year and biopsies and all of that. And the doctors couldn't really figure out what it was, and they thought it was benign. And so I had a minor surgery last October. Around that time, I also felt called to move up to Seattle. And so I was getting ready for that, and I launched. It was the first time actually that I had not lived anywhere except Sacramento, where I had grown up and everything. So it was a huge change. I went out there, and then 10 days later, got a call from the surgeon in Sacramento that I had in fact tested positive for cancer. And it's a type of cancer called extra ovarian yolk sac tumor. Of course, I had never heard of that before.
Yeah.
And basically got transferred to University of Washington Medical School up in Seattle. I ended up living just a mile and a half from that hospital and had wonderful doctors and care there. And so then I started chemo the day after Christmas last year and went through an intensive regimen for a couple months. Started to recover from that, and then COVID and the quarantine started, and then I
Yeah.
also had a recurrence of cancer, unfortunately. And so at that point, the doctors recommended that I go into more intensive chemo. And at that point, I decided I need more family support and moved down here to Nevada to continue treatment.
Okay. Wow. Wow. So when you first got the news, how did it affect your life mentally and how did it affect your family life?
Yes. Cancer is such a prevalent issue in today's society. I know a lot of people
Yes.
who have been diagnosed with cancer. Actually, just a couple days ago, I found out a friend of mine got diagnosed with cancer, with breast cancer, and it's so prevalent. And I think many people who are watching this, if they haven't been diagnosed with cancer at some point, they probably know someone who has a neighbor, a friend, or a loved one
Yeah.
in their life who has some sort of cancer currently or in the past. But somehow
Yeah.
that even the prevalence of cancer in our society doesn't really prepare you for the experience of it coming to you and being your own personal experience. And especially for me as a young adult, I was 25 at the time, it was just such a shock. You go through all the stages of grief that people talk about, like shock and denial, anger, trying to bargain your way out of it, the sadness, the loss
Yeah.
that you have to like anticipate. And then along with all of that, you're trying to go to appointments and figure out the next steps
Yeah.
of treatment and surgery and chemo and radiation and things like that. And it's such like I came through this experience and I look back on it and realize that it's not just a physical health experience; it's an emotional, mental, spiritual. It takes all of you to get through something like that. And yeah, it for me personally, I went through a lot of shock. I went through a lot of sadness over the loss, especially as I went through chemo, and it just strips you bare of like energy and your hair and just all these things. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult. And as far as like with my family, they were still, my parents were living here in Nevada already, and my sister is near Sacramento. So I was far apart from them. Of course, they're like very supportive, and we did a lot of video calls. Like every couple days, we'd connect and I'd share the latest news with them, and they were very supportive. I ended up having a huge community of support up in Seattle, as well as my family members and friends back in Sacramento. So I'm just so grateful for that. But I know that not everyone has that, and it can be
Yes.
very difficult for young adults living with cancer. They can actually fall through the cracks because there are more older adults with cancer, or sometimes children with cancer, unfortunately. But younger adults, when you're going into planning like your life and your education and goals for jobs and all of that, to be hit with a cancer
Yeah.
diagnosis is really huge.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. You know, I share a little bit of story with you when we originally talked about how one of my close friends was diagnosed with brain cancer years ago. I think it was in 2014 to be exact. And I think he was like, he had to be 24, 25 as well. And, you know, it was extremely challenging for me personally because we are good friends, number one. And when he went to get checked out, he didn't have any symptoms, no lumps or anything. And so what happened was he had like something with the ear. He felt like he was having an ear infection. And so the doctor, he worked in a medical facility, and the doctors, when the doctor said, oh, well, since, you know, we're gonna, you know, check your ear out, why don't we do MRI and all this other stuff? And they found out they had the tumor. So then they did the biopsy and all that stuff. And so I was the only person that knew. I was the only person that knew, oh my God, for about probably close to 6 months.
Wow.
And he did not tell his family only because he didn't want them to worry. His mom was having challenges, and so he didn't want them to worry. And that was a lot of weight on me. A lot of, you know, I was because I didn't know much. I didn't know much. You hear the worst when you hear cancer, and then it's brain cancer stage 3. And I did a lot of internalizing and just a lot of emotions. I didn't allow him to see me get emotional, but I would drive off by myself, cry, I would pray, and it was really, really hard. And I went to him one day and I said, man, you know, I really want to encourage you to kind of let other people in so other people can be a support system for you. And so we started off, well, he started off with just sharing with his father, and it was just like a domino effect from there. But it was a lot of, he had got a lot of support from there, a lot of support, but it was very, very emotional because he was so young. And prior to that, he was having, you know, it was, I felt like he was always having stuff going on with him. He would, when I first met him, he would have major headaches. It was just major headaches out of nowhere. And then the headaches will stop, and then he will have major nosebleeds. And this will go on maybe like for a month or two, then that'll stop. Then he will vomit. And then, you know, so I felt guilty and I felt bad that he had to go through that, you know, at such a young age and stuff. But and I explained to you how he worked. He was a fighter though. He was a fighter. He had a good personality. He laughed. He joked, and I think, and I told how he worked 2 jobs continuously against his doctor's recommendation. But I think looking back, he did it to kind of keep himself going mentally.
Yeah.
You know, just something he can look forward to doing, getting up. And it was tough. It was tough. I remember one day he came on my house. Oh man. And this when the hair fell out and stuff. So he had to shave it and he had on the hat. And I still can remember this as it happened yesterday. And I was sitting on the couch. He came over there and he said, look, Jay. And man, you know, I just broke down. I couldn't help it, you know.
Yeah.
But then I learned to try to make this about him and not about me, and just try to be as strong as possible. A lot of prayer, a lot of fasting, a lot of reading the Bible, a lot of trusting in God to get all of us through that time. So I can tell that you pretty strong too, and you seem like you got a lot of, you know, just a lot of joy. So not letting it get you down. So thank you for that, because a lot of people need to see that side. Because, you know, when you hear that, you know, cancer, you know, people think like, oh, you know, it's the end. You know, my mom as well, she was diagnosed with colon cancer a while back, and that was really scary too. And she's in Chicago, and I'm down here in California, and she hid it from everybody. And so she waited so long to the point when the doctors told her, look, you know, you got to have surgery or this not going to turn out good.
Yeah.
And then finally she told everybody, she made it through, but she has to wear, oh my God, what's that? One of those bags, is it a colostomy bag? Am I saying it right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know, but now she just said, I'm just glad to be alive. And so she even talks about it in her own little circle of friends and try to educate people and tell people, go get yourself checked out, you know, go to the doctor, stuff like that. So it's important to state that there is hope, you know, even in the midst of all this stuff, but it is very prevalent, like you said, in our society.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how did the arts come to play and help you through this journey? Just talk a
Right.
little bit about.
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, the arts have been a big part of my life for a long time, and
Yeah,
I look back in my life and I just see ways in which, um, of course, like if you're hit with a diagnosis like that, nothing really prepares you for that, but just that there were tools and resources such as the arts that I was
yeah,
already involved in, that I was able to use and to invest in during this time to for one just make it through, but also to have that hope and be able to be sustained and strengthened through all the emotional ups and downs. It's often described as a roller coaster. With chemo, it's like you're hit with the drugs, and then you go down into this low point with your physical energy and everything else, and you have to like climb back out of that, and then you're hit with
yeah,
another round of chemo. And I think that happens to a lot of people with going through any sort of cancer treatment. So for me, music, of course, was one way. I would sometimes just come home and from a chemo round and just play my violin or play the piano. And there is one of the things I most appreciate about the arts is that it helps us to express our emotions that we just can't put into words, that we can't verbally explain and express. And so I remember vividly the day that I found out that I needed to go through chemo. Because at first my doctor was advising, okay, we'll just do another surgery and just make sure all the cancer is out. But then she talked to their colleagues and they decided, like, since this is such an aggressive form of cancer and it can spread quickly, that chemo was the way to go forward. And so that was such a difficult day for me because I knew, like, before then I hadn't not had any symptoms from cancer and I felt actually fine and healthy. But knowing that I would be going through chemo, I knew that I would feel and look like a cancer patient, that it would, all the things I had read and heard about and seen with other people, the hair loss, the nausea, the fatigue, things like that, that would be happening to me. And so I just remember that was such an emotionally difficult day for me. And that night I just started to play a Chopin prelude on the piano. It's nicknamed the Raindrop Prelude because there's like this repeating note that goes on throughout, and it's like becomes like a storm in the middle of it, and then it gradually resolves at the end. And I just played my heart into that, and just that was one example of when music was just a way to emote, to process through my feelings in a way I couldn't through words. I journaled a lot. I sometimes, like, verbally processing is hard for me, but I internally process things and I need to get it out there somehow. So I would journal and fill up pages and pages with what I was feeling and thinking.
yeah,
There were I went through some art therapy sessions up in Seattle, where I was just a couple miles away. There was a wonderful cancer support center, and they had a lot of classes and workshops and support groups there. And so I got involved with a young adult support group, which was wonderful to be part of. And then I was connected with an art therapist who worked with the cancer patients there. And she had this room filled with art supplies such as paint and musical instruments and things like clay and all sorts of different things. And so I had a few sessions with her, and that helped me to work through some things through art, to create art, to remember that there is beauty in the midst of pain and there's hope in the midst of pain. So yeah, those are just a few examples of how art became very therapeutic and healing for me.
So one of the things I like about you now so far is you don't mind sharing your story. So
Right.
my friend in the beginning, it was extremely hard for him to share his story. He's of the Ukrainian, he's Ukrainian.
Mhm.
And you know, this culture, a lot of times they're very private. And he
Yes.
was encouraged by family members to, but I was on the other end encouraging him, like, look, God's brought you through, you're healed, people need to hear this. And what happened was a lady from his church was diagnosed with cancer.
Mhm.
And so his family really encouraged him, or I'm going to say use the word, embraced him as he started to talk to this lady about his journey. And it really encouraged her. And it got to a point where the family was like, come over, talk to her, because it was really helping her as he shared his story and stuff. So thank you for sharing your story, because I think sometimes it is such a hard topic and it's a personal topic. But once you realize that, oh, I'm not alone in this, other people have went through a similar experience or will go through a similar experience. And when you share your journey, you know that you will bring healing um, to other people through your story, through God. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
and I'd agree with that. That any sort of crisis, whether it's a health crisis or something relational, a divorce, something like that, that it's very easy, at least for some of us, to isolate ourselves. And I think that is a great danger when we're going through something difficult. And it's not like we need to tell the whole world all at once the day we find out that we have a cancer diagnosis
Right.
or whatever, but just to
Yeah.
have that support. And I know as I was growing up, I'm a strong introvert, always have been, and when I was younger, I tended to isolate myself more. If I was going through something difficult, I tended to go internalize the pain and try to deal with it on my own. And that did not help things at times. And
Yeah.
in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of work that God has done in my life, and just through, especially like through getting ready to move to Seattle, which was again the first time that I moved outside of Sacramento, and it was just a huge change for me. My family had all lived in Sacramento for years and years. My parents lived in one single house for like 32 years. So we were pretty stable in Sacramento for a long time. So it was a huge change for me. But I just received so much support from my community in Sacramento. And they were like, yeah, go for it. Go ahead. Like, we feel like this is something you're being called to. And then the community that I went to in Seattle was a church community that I got involved with, which was amazing community. And through that, before I got diagnosed with cancer, I had all this family and community support. And so when I found out I had cancer, it was still difficult for me to actually voice that, because I think just voicing that you have cancer, it could be
Yeah.
something else as well, but just saying that you have cancer, that is very difficult. It's one thing when it's just in your mind or you're being told by a doctor or something, but when you're telling other people, that can be very, very difficult. So it took me, like, I didn't tell really many people, only a few close family and friends, until I'd say like maybe November or towards December, and it was like December that I started chemo. So it was a while. I went through like all the appointments where they weren't sure what I had and what was going on. I didn't
Yeah.
really talk to people much about that. And then finally, when I was diagnosed, it was probably another month or two after that that I actually like spread the news and was like, hey, this is what I'm going through. So it does take some time, but I'd encourage like anyone listening to this, whatever kind of crisis you're going through right now, it's like, find someone, like hopefully just even a couple people or a support group or something, so that you're not isolated.
That's awesome. So at what point or what motivates you to actually start speaking out about it? Because
Yeah,
I
I
feel
think,
like it's one thing to share your story. Well, let me back that. I feel like it's one thing to tell people that, okay, this is what I'm going through, but then you get to a point you want to speak out about it to raise awareness. At what point did it get to that?
right. I think it was very gradual for me, just throughout my journey, seeing like what helped me. And so I was involved in that young adult support group up in Seattle while I was going through chemo. And I think that was very impactful to me, to be around other people, kind of around my own age, 20s to 40s, who are also diagnosed with cancer, and just seeing the needs. It just, it opens your eyes to like other people who are kind of in the same boat. And so, and since now that I'm out of treatment right now and I'm in recovery and everything, I'm so much more aware of patients who are going through this. Even just that my eyes were open to like the hospital experience. Like, being in the hospital experience is very difficult in itself. You're sitting in bed basically all day, all night, and you're
Mhm.
hooked up to an IV, and you're receiving drugs that cause all sorts of side effects. And that goes for cancer treatment or any other hospital experience for people. And it's a very sterile environment. And I saw, like, especially in that, there's a lot of great things about standard medicine, but something that sometimes it doesn't always do is feed the soul. And sometimes that is missed in the midst of trying to get through treatment. And you just need something beautiful, something that gives you hope. And I found that in the arts. And so I want to offer that to other people, and just know, hey, there are
Nice.
resources, there are materials, there are things that you can find, and people that want to help you through this. And so it's not just you're going into survival mode, but you can actually even perhaps grow and thrive through this time, even as there are parts of it that are very difficult.
Nice, nice. when your family saw you go into survival mode and saw that you are a fighter in regards to this right here, how do you think that impacted them? Because when you see someone that you love, whether it's a family member or a friend, going through a very tough time in their lives, regardless of what it does affect you emotionally in another area of your life. It definitely affects you. And then I know for me, when I saw my friend was willing to still work the two jobs, and I'm just like, so that gave me some type of hope, because that showed me that, okay, he's willing to fight, even against the doctor wishes. This boy was like, look, I'm okay, I'm going to work two good jobs, God is going to help me through this. And he did it. And his doctors, they was very, whatever, they was shocked that he was able to do that, because now he had some days when he was physically weak, because he took the chemo in the pill form, and he did the radiation, at the facility and stuff. But there were times you could tell he would get up and go to work. And even at both his jobs, they had it set up where he can take some time off. They understood everything, but he never took any time off during his treatment time. None. Didn't miss no days at all. As a matter of fact, he ended up getting promoted.
Wow,
He ended up getting
that is
promoted.
amazing.
Because he
Yeah.
was so diligent at working and not letting this thing take him down.
Yeah.
So how did when your family saw you fight, how did that help them with coping with what you were going through?
Yeah, it was definitely a very difficult time for them, especially since I was in Seattle and they were down in this area. So I think that it really was encouraging to them, because before this whole cancer thing, I tended to be a person who kind of just followed other people and kind of didn't see myself as any sort of like leader sort of person, or just taking authority over my life. Like, I mean, I did like work hard in school and all of that kind of thing, but just kind of, I depended upon my parents, I would say, a lot when I was growing up, because I was the youngest in the family and for a lot of reasons. And but through this experience, like, I learned to kind of take authority, like when you are talking with doctors and having to ask questions about the drugs you're taking or your diagnosis or your treatment plan, like, you have to kind of take some ownership and take some authority. And I think my parents really saw me grow in that, and they were encouraged by that. I would say that like everyone's journey, for example, with chemo is very unique. Everyone kind of goes through a different type of chemo, the drugs that they receive, the schedule that they're on, how long they're in chemo. So for
Yeah.
me, I was able to work intermittently between the chemo rounds as a senior caregiver. And I'm so glad for that, because it was one-on-one relational work where it just helped me to get outside myself and to focus on something other than treatment, other than cancer. And there were a lot of days that I was so grateful for that kind of work, because it was other-centered, and it helped me to just not go into a self like pity party kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
but I know that for some people, depending on age and their prior health situation, um, before going into treatment, that they might not be able to do that. So it's like, what can you do, even if it's something small, to kind of get
Yes.
outside yourself, focus on someone else if you can, just even a little bit. Even if you can just, like, for example, write a card and send it in the mail, and
Yeah.
that's all you can have the energy to do, because you're going through chemo or something. That's huge, and that's going to come back and bless you. So, and change your perspective on what you're going through. But yeah, back to the family stuff, that like, I think my family was encouraged by just seeing how like I was able to go through it. I just think that God gave me a lot of strength that I just didn't even know I had, but He just was able to like give me that each and every day.
Yes, yes. I really hope that people watch this video, and I really hope that they get inspired, because it's like you said, this thing is prevalent. More and more people are being diagnosed. More and more people don't really understand about it, and don't understand why it's happening. This same guy, my friend mom, she just passed away from stage 4 cancer in May.
Yeah.
And it was really hard on the family. It was extremely hard on the family, because it was the mom. She's like the glue and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But the interesting thing about it is I think for some reason, I think he really kind of understand the dynamics of things and stuff like that. And she didn't go through any treatment, and she chose not to go through that, and chose to trust God with regard to if she stayed or left, you know. But it was tough. I'll be honest, it was tough. But you know, he either way I go, he just said, I'm okay because I know, you know, there's hope at the end of her journey, you know. So I hope people just watch these video like this and just get inspired, just really get inspired, and know that this is a part of life. It's a part of life, you know. I mean, regardless if it's a headache or this or, you know, whatever it is, it's a part of life. So yeah, thank you once again for sharing. So you write too. You write. So let's talk a little. So you said you write, you play violin,
Yeah.
and you do like art, clay, and stuff, or what?
Yeah, well, so music and writing are my primary two forms of art that I have enjoyed for years and years. I got my first journal when I was like 9, and I started piano when I was like 7. So it's been a big part of my life. But I've branched out into other forms of art just a little bit. I've been involved
Yeah.
in choirs and like church and college. So I've done a little bit of singing, not so much solo,
Nice.
but that's
Yeah.
been fun. And then I got into a bit of swing and ballroom dance during high school and college. So
Nice.
I just really enjoyed that. Dance is something I want to get more involved in. And yeah, I've done a little bit of, like I said, my mom did like nature journaling with me and my sister where we sketch things in nature. So I've done a little bit of
Yeah.
visual. So I've kind of experimented a little bit with other types of arts, but I'd say music and writing would be like the ones that I've been most invested in.
So what type of music do you normally write?
Well, I actually haven't gone into writing music. I was
Yeah.
classically trained in piano and violin, so
Okay.
I got used to like performing other people's music and what they wrote, and Bach and Beethoven and Mozart and all those classical musicians. So yeah, I'm interested in getting involved in maybe some songwriting. There are a lot of
Nice.
singer-songwriters that I enjoy that are kind of off the beaten path and that I've listened to, and I just love their lyrics as well as their music and instrumentation. So I'd be interested in that, but I haven't gotten into that quite yet.
Okay. So what would be your choice of music that you like that just really helps you out when it gets you through the day when you're having a tough time and
Yeah.
stuff like that?
Well, it's kind of hard to put into a certain genre, but it tends to be a mix of like folk, maybe a little bluegrass, and then maybe a little bit of it's kind of just a conglomeration of different types of genres of music coming together. So I'll just name one band that I really enjoy is called the Arcadian Wild, and they have like kind of a mixture of folk and bluegrass, I'd say, and their instruments include fiddle, mandolin, and guitar, and they sing. So I love their lyrics. They're very poetic and thought-provoking lyrics, and then they have these instruments that really just mesh together well. So that's just one example of music that I enjoy.
Nice, nice. How did you and Talia meet? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, sure. So we actually were both from homeschooling families, and it is so funny, but we actually don't remember when we first met, but it was through
Okay.
some church or homeschooling thing that we were both a part of. And then later on, we reconnected, and I knew that she played music at senior centers in the Sacramento area. And so I
Yes.
just sent her an email one day. I was like, hey, could you give me some tips about getting connected with senior centers? And she was actually at that point getting a business up and running where she would employ other musicians as well. Because there's a lot of need for that actually for musicians to
Yeah.
connect with senior centers and just to bring like an hour of music at a time. So she hired me, and it has been one of my favorite jobs ever that I've had, just to bring in either some piano music, and if they have a piano there, I'll play piano, or I'll bring in my violin and just play for an hour. And also not just play music, but connect with the people there, the residents, as well as the faculty.
Oh.
And yeah, talk with
Oh.
them, get to know them, explain things about the music and about the composers. And I just have so many wonderful memories from those experiences.
Oh, I didn't know that you was working with her. I didn't know that.
Yes. So currently I'm out of the Sacramento area, but I work for her probably for a year and a half or so, something like that.
Nice, nice, nice. So did that experience, do you feel that experience kind of helped you grow as a person too? Because working with the senior, now this was geared towards the senior older adult population.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I love working with seniors. I've grown up around older adults through church, through family, and just family members who are older. And just they have so many experiences to share with us younger people and stories about their lives and everything. I remember there's this one couple that in Folsom area that I would go and play at that senior center. And there was a couple that had been married like 72 years, sweetest, cutest couple ever. And so just things
yeah,
like that where I got to know people. And yeah, it definitely changed me as a person. I remember there were a lot of times when in the midst of that job, like I was moving from one place to another within Sacramento and just going through a lot of transition and maybe just having kind of an off day. And I would come into the senior center and just know that my purpose there was to bring joy and laughter and hope to the people there through music, and it just completely would change my day. And I go out just smiling and just so glad that I had been able to spend just an hour there. So yeah, it definitely changed me for the better.
that's impressive. I used to run in senior older, we call old adults. But I used to run a senior program. Actually, well, no, oh yeah, that's how I met Allison. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, that's how I met Talia through
Hmm.
the run. We ended up meeting in one of the meetings that we was went to that was geared towards to older adult seniors.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when she started talking about her story, I was like, oh, I said I got to get her on the show. You know, it was she was very vocal about her journey, about what she do, and I felt like that was something that was very unique that we've not had on the show before. So that's how we connected. And I had been texting her. I mean, it's been what, at least about 5 years. I'm assuming about it's been a while since we made that connection, and we just got on the show last month. So I kept her number in my phone all these years. I said I'll text her and say, hey, you free? Well, no, I'm out of town, or no. And
Yeah.
I'll text her maybe 3 months. And finally, I'm like, okay. I thought to myself, I said, well, since we are all doing Zoom meetings through Zoom and Teams and stuff, so I'm like, maybe I can get her this way. And boom, that's how I connected with her. I was trying to get her at the studio at first before COVID. So yeah, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, Talia is just, she's a wonderful person, been a wonderful friend for a long time. And it's just amazing what she has done through her business. She just treats her employees well. And I just
Yeah,
love working under her. So yeah, I'm just
yeah,
grateful.
that's
Glad that you
awesome.
made that connection. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm gonna interview her soon, probably within the next weeks. I want to focus on what the business part of what she does, and just really, because I want people to know what she, just the services she provides. And I think it would be very beneficial because
Yes.
it's sort of unique, so people will really get blessed by what she do. So I want to highlight that piece. So I
Right.
want to ask you, are you, or would you be willing to play something for us, or just like a
Yeah,
violin piece?
sure. Yeah.
Yes,
So
good.
I have a couple examples here. I can play something. I also just want to share. So I do a little bit of, I guess you'd say, sketching, sort of, and just want to kind of show that as an example because
Okay.
something, and we might get into this a bit later more, but that sometimes when people are first exploring the arts as a way of healing, it can feel rather daunting, and it can feel like, oh, I don't see myself as an artist, and so I don't even want to try that because I'm going to mess it up or something like that. And I just like, my encouragement would be just for people to step outside their comfort zone a little bit, and you'll find it's worth it. Just try something new. Making mistakes is part of our learning process in anything.
Yes.
So just have fun with it. So with visual arts and like sketching, I did that years ago with my mom through nature journaling, but I've done a little bit more just for my own personal growth. I haven't had any lessons or classes anytime recently. So I do draw stick figures and
Yeah.
I don't have like sophisticated visual art. But I just want to show this. So at the beginning of each year, I like to kind of journal or process through the past year and kind of look forward to
Yes.
the new year. And kind of put out like, what are my dreams, what are my hopes for this new coming year, and reflect on the past year as well. So I did that the beginning of this year, 2020. And so I was looking back on 2019 and just decided that I'd do it a little bit differently. Instead of just writing it and doing it through words and written word, I wanted to actually do some pictures. And a lot of these are pictures, and I'll show this page in a minute, from prayer journaling, where I would like, a picture would sometimes come to mind. And something I love in the Bible is that there are a lot of metaphors, especially like in Isaiah, for example, the book of Isaiah. There's just so many word pictures of like streams and rivers in the desert to different types of animals and different things. And I'm a visual kind of learner, I think, so I enjoy that a lot. So just kind of, if you can see here, this page is just like, it's basically just little pictures that reminded me of what I learned during the past year, what I learned in 2019, how I grew in different ways. So for example, like the fire right there is like representing how through especially my cancer diagnosis and going through chemo, there were things that God kind of cleared away in my life. And so the idea of a refining fire, and fire refining something like gold or silver or precious metal. So that's one example. A candle up here, like being a light in the world. So a lot of different things. And I just did these little sketches. And by the time I finished, like maybe an hour or two later, I was just so encouraged to kind of look back on my growth and do it in a way that was creative, that I could look back on and was kind of fun and enjoyable. And I just did it with colored pencils and regular pencils. So real simple, but just as encouragement to those out there that might be like trying some sort of art for the first time, like just take small steps and have fun with it and kind of just see where it goes. Because I think that's one of the beauties of art, is that it is kind of outside of our like logical reasoning, kind of controlled side of our brain, and it kind of brings us into a creative side. And that's a wonderful, crucial part of our healing journey in anything, I think, is to find a creative avenue to express our emotions or to work through things, whatever it might be. So that's my encouragement with like a little bit of visual art there. I'd be happy to play a part of a piece on violin.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just a little bit about this piece. This is called Meditation of Thais, and it's by a composer named Jules Massenet. And so this was written first for an opera, actually, and then it was transcribed for violin. And it's also been played by like Yo-Yo Ma on cello and various instruments, many different instruments. But for me, it's been such a pivotal piece in my life, because to me it speaks of like redemption, the idea of beauty coming out of like pain and out of the ashes. And my dad loves this piece, so I actually learned it first for him back when I was in high school, and then I just revisited it over the years, and it kind of became a part of me, if that makes any sense. So so let me grab my violin. Okay, and I'm just gonna play kind of the last part of it, because it's a little bit long. I don't want to take too much time, but just give a.
Well, you could play as much as you want. You could play like 3 or 4 minutes of it. That's fine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Beautiful. Very, 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 very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Wow. You know, as you was playing, I was starting to think to myself, so you have to have an ear to hear those sounds and things like that. Am I correct?
Right. Yes. Yes. It
Yeah.
just it takes a lot of practice and a lot of work, and I've had a lot of amazing teachers through the years for both piano and violin, and just yeah, you train your ear with violin. Um, Unlike piano, you have to kind of learn where the pitches are and
Yeah.
know like where exactly your finger should be for a note. So yeah.
Yeah. That is very, very nice. That's a beautiful piece. Just yeah, it's nice. Very nice.
Yeah, so that's
Thank
an
you for that.
example of like how music it just puts things into word into just into expression that I can't put into words. So
Yeah.
for me, like that, um, I've gotten the picture before in my mind of like a rainstorm, and then it turns like very very intense in the middle part of the piece, and then you come back out into like the sun shining and I think
Yeah.
of living up in Seattle, and they say like, oh, it's always raining in Seattle, which is true a lot of the time. But then you have when the sun shines through the clouds after a rainstorm, and it's just the most beautiful thing. And that's one of the things I think of when I play that piece.
Yes, nice. I have a friend who sings. This girl loves, she has a beautiful voice, so she loves to sing. And whenever she's going through something, she just sings, and it really uplifts her moods and her spirits and stuff. And she's
Yeah.
always been like that.
That is wonderful. Yeah, and I think especially with the voice and with singing, there's something especially healing from that because it's your own voice and it's coming from
Yeah,
inside you. I think it's just an amazing thing that we were all built with this ability to actually create music just from ourselves, from within ourselves. And yeah, some of us may feel like, oh, I don't have a great voice and everything, but hey, sometimes you just have to do it for you. And so if you're
yeah,
singing in the
exactly.
shower or singing in your room and no one else is there, that can be very healing.
Yeah. Have you thought about, I don't know if you mentioned this, but have you thought about doing, or are you at the level where you can give piano lessons or violin lessons and
I
things
have
like that? Or,
actually. I started teaching piano during my freshman year of college for a neighbor family across the street from us. And since then, I actually ended up teaching from that year until I moved up to Seattle last October. And then I had a senior caregiving job, and now I'm living down here with my parents and kind of in this transitional place. So yeah, I've had some experience teaching music lessons and enjoyed that a lot. It's been a great experience. Yeah.
yeah, that's good because I can tell you're very passionate for the arts.
Yeah.
Have you found that a lot of people your age is really gravitating more towards the arts? Because I do think I think it's a different type of healing, or it can bring a different type of healing alone or separate from the medical field. Because I think as an individual, you have those feelings or background or things like that. I know when I listen to music or I've heard certain songs, it reminded me from my past where I was 15, 16, 20.
Yeah.
It takes you back and those old emotions come up,
Yeah.
and some emotions are good, and then some
Yeah.
emotions are not so good, but it brings them back up, and I can tell how it really affects my mood for the day. So I think I personally make the choice of gravitating towards the music that brings good memories, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it
that's
just
that's
yeah, there's a lot of music that does bring back great memories for me, and sometimes you have to work through the harder emotions, and art can also
yeah,
help that way as well. But yeah, it's amazing what music can do. There's been like more studies in recent years with like, for example, older adults and who might have Alzheimer's or dementia, and how music brings back memories, and they're able to sing along with a song, whereas like before and after the song they're not able to verbally express themselves, or they're just dealing with their dementia or whatever it might be. But someone turns on a song that they know from way back when, and they're able
yeah, yeah,
to remember the lyrics. It's amazing.
yeah. Are there any resource that you would like to recommend for healing through the arts before we leave?
Yeah, sure. I'd say again, just reiterate, just like if someone is listening to this and wants to just try a new art. Maybe they have some artistic background and experience in the arts, or maybe they don't at all. It's great to just start small. So a couple things that have been helpful to me. One is, this might sound funny, but I love coloring books for adults. There are coloring books, and that it doesn't take really much artistic skill. You're not the one that has to draw the picture. You just get to color it in and have fun with that. And I enjoy using colored pencils and shading and all of that. So there's one called Enchanted Forest by Johanna Basford, who lives in Scotland, and her pictures are just pen and ink, and they're very intricate. They're like plants and animals and flowers and all that kind of thing, and they're just beautiful works of art, and then you get to color them in. So that's something. I would say that with music, as a musician, I listen to a lot of music, and it really matters what we put into our ears, like along the lines of like what we want to put into our mouths and what we want to nourish our bodies with. We need to kind of think about like what we are nourishing our minds and our hearts and spirits with as well. So I enjoy listening to a lot of great music where hopefully the lyrics are uplifting and healing in some way. So a few artists that I would recommend are like Krista Wells, Jason Gray, J.J. Heller, L.A. Holcomb, Andrew Peterson. Those are a few artists, along with Arcadian Wild, which I mentioned earlier, that have been like very healing and had thought-provoking lyrics, and the music itself is healing to listen to. So that's another recommendation. Make a playlist of songs that are healing, that are uplifting, that give you joy and hope in the midst of whatever your crisis might be. And then something that I came across recently, well, last year I went up to Seattle before I moved there. I went up there in August, and I got some training from an organization called First Aid Arts, and a wonderful organization that has a lot of great ideas for how to use the arts in a healing way for people who have been through some sort of trauma or hardship. So that could be with, they work with homelessness, sex trafficking, people who have gone through natural disasters, things like that. And they have a lot of great resources on their website and that you can even download. They have a toolkit that they designed for us who are going through this COVID quarantine. And so just dealing with stress in creative and artistic ways.
Okay. I want to ask you one question before we leave, run out of time, but can you explain your vision for helping people by using the arts alongside counseling? I think that's important.
Yes, exactly. So for years, I was interested in becoming a music therapist, and I was looking into that. And then over the past year, I started to think beyond just music and kind of look at the other arts, because I love just being involved in a variety of arts, and I want to explore more arts for myself as well. And so I started thinking about the idea of partnering with a counselor. And while the counselor, I've been to counseling sessions that have been very helpful for me, and they kind of work through things verbally. So I would come alongside a counselor and offer creative, artistic avenues for people to realize issues in their life that maybe they need to deal with, to also realize the truth about themselves. I think a lot of things are rooted in our identity and who we believe that we are, and our behavior kind of reflects who we believe we are. And so, for example, just helping someone create a piece of art, maybe a mosaic or something, it can remind them that beauty can come out of the ashes. And what does that look like in a piece of artwork? And then like perhaps they put that up in their home, and that reminds them that they are worth something, and each of us have something beautiful and unique inside of us to share with the world. So that's just kind of a quick overview. I think that it would help people prepare for regular counseling sessions where they're verbally processing through things. Sometimes we need to also non-verbally and artistically process through our emotions and our issues in life. So yeah, I'm looking into learning a bit more about counseling. I'm connecting with counselors right now in my area, and just kind of getting feedback on this idea and seeing where this might be needed. I might even take this idea to hospitals, since I've been in the hospital a lot, and to senior centers, to other places where the arts would just be helpful in a healing way.
Nice. I think that would be very impactful, in my opinion. I think that's a very good idea, extremely good idea. So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your journey. And this has by far been one of the best shows I've done. I really enjoyed it a lot. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I enjoyed it a lot too. Yeah.
Thank you for watching this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, If you would like a DVD copy of this show, or if you would like to be a guest on our show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.